Hello, and welcome to the podcast about Transformers comics, Transformers toys, and everything in between. I'm Onyx Prime with my two co-hosts here.
Hi, I'm Computron.
Hi, I'm Kilobyte. Uh, uh, hey guys, is that Waspinator over there in the bar? Is he waving at us?
Can Waspinator join you? Waspinator loves chatting.
Don't look at him. Don't look at him.
No, don't wave back.
Oh, okay.
Just ignore him.
Moving
Anyway.
on. With our comic discussions, today's episode takes us to IDW Monstrosity. Both Computron and myself have read the series already, but this is Kilobyte's first time, and we're excited to hear his thoughts about the series. But before we dive into that, Computron, do you mind telling us some fun facts?
Yeah. So Monstrosity was first released in March 1st, 2013, and the last issue was released July 31st of the same year. As always, the author of the trilogy is Chris Menson and Flint Dill. And the artist is going to be the same artist throughout the trilogy, which is Livio Ramondelli.
Kilobyte, do you mind giving us a short summary of these comics?
Sure can. Transformers Monstrosity is the sequel to Autocracy and continues where the series left off, with the Autobots dealing with freedom in the very early days of the war. The Dinobots take center stage. On the run from the law as they attempt to steal the funds to escape Cybertron, while Scorponok usurps Megatron's seat of power following his defeat at the end of Autocracy. This information was taken from the wiki.
Well, that sounds like fun. Shall we get to it?
We shall.
All right. I would like to point out we see very similar to the G1 series. Megatron, what's the phrase? Pushed, shoved outside of Astrotrain into space. But unlike the movie, he lands on the planet of Junkion, that is, right? And we get to see him like battle his way from this damaged state and try to survive this hostile planet. What do you guys think of that?
I liked it. I had to actually look up this quote. It was a quote from Moby Dick, and the quote is, "From hell's heart, I stab at thee." So to me, it's, watching Megatron go through literal HE double hockey sticks and rise to what all this just destruction, this just garbage of a planet, this sea of acid, and literally conquering everything just to come back and be the ruler of the Decepticons. I don't know. To me, it was just like, yeah, like that one Moby Dick quote.
For me, Junkion was a little bit kind of like a letdown, because Megatron lands and suddenly he's surrounded by the inhabitants of Junkion, and they just start attacking him. And we know Meritron comes from a gladiatorial combat arena background, but he takes them all on and kills them and takes parts and puts them together. And I'm like, but how did you put that together so fast? I feel like he doesn't have like first aid training or anything like that to really be able to fix himself like that. So it was like kind of like weird. And then as he continues through Jonkion and all the other enemies rise and try to take him down for either scraps or for food, like the Trypticons, he falls into the sea of acid, I think it was, or of rust.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and so he gets dragged under the sea, and there's a special person in that planet that I'll cover that a little bit later. But he tells him, like, if you fall in, you're pretty much dead. You're a goner because it's gonna cover you in rust. And but then he surfaces back up and he's like just fine, like nothing happened. I'm like, but I thought this was supposed to at least have a little bit of rust or lose something. And he just rises like nothing happened. And I'm like, this is a little bit too powerful.
I feel like it's just like one of those images that they're trying to portray, that he will adapt by like any means necessary. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, and I feel like I have a little bit of knowledge of what might happen later on based on some stuff we've talked about before in our old D&D story. So I might feel like they'll explain it later on, but at the beginning was kind of like a little bit confusing, a bit kind of too powerful.
Definitely explain it like way later on. But yeah, I can totally see how that can be lost right now. That is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of agree. Like the first time I read it through, I'm like, wait, how did he do this and all that? And to me, I guess when I'm reading it like my second time through, I'm like, oh, wow, I can actually enjoy this because this is just how much of a BA Megatron is, you know?
Yeah. Yes, he is very
Hey,
badass.
should we flip to what's going on Cybertron?
Yeah, can I talk about that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
go
for it.
for it, man. Take the wheel.
So back on Cybertron, at least for the Decepticons, we get to see our first appearance of Scorponok. And to me, it's just absolutely hilarious because you know how Starscream being Starscream, he's always wanted to be the next leader of the Decepticons. And like, even right after they just toss Megatron to the Junkion, you know, Scorponok was already assuming command, and it's just like, wow, Starscream, you failed again, buddy. You're still let down.
Playing the long game.
Yeah.
Long con, yeah. I do like the whole Scorponok trying to take over. Like I've always liked his design. I feel like I've never really seen him on the series that I've watched, or the TV shows or the movies. So this is kind of like a new thing for me for Scorponok to be kind of like in command and trying to take Megatron down. So it was a little bit kind of not confusing, but it was like, okay, I think I can follow this.
I never liked his tactics. We'll
Yeah.
probably get into that a little bit later. But yeah.
Who's Scorpionox? Well, let's go into it now. His tactic with his how would I like to say this? When he runs into the Energon refinery and he's put in a place where he thought he could get it, but the Dinobots were already there, and now the Autobots are on their way, and he's put in a situation where he makes a decision that if I can't have it, no one can, and it essentially just explodes, right? He clicks a button and makes the whole refinery explode.
Which leaves a humongous crater.
Yes, he does.
They do a news broadcast about it, and they say like lots of people died except for
One literally
the main
inside
cast that were right
detonation.
there, literally dead center
Yeah.
of the detonation.
And they live.
Yeah, and they live, of course, because you can only live if you're
you gotta
part of
be
the
an
A team.
important character to survive.
Oh, like I love it too because like the next scene it's like Optimus in the sparring room. I'm like, oh, okay, sure, you're just alive. Let's roll with that.
Oh yeah, that's because Optimus is like Jesus, right? He can't die. Always comes back.
Backing up again to what I was saying about Scorponok's tactics. You see, and it's kind of a repetitive thing throughout the entire comic. You see, he does very cowardly approaches. Like, so there was the Exodus, right, of everybody trying to get off the planet, and the Seekers were already attacking the ships that had civilians on them, and a lot of his tactics required civilians being his targets. And so, going back to the previous comic, you're watching Megatron's the way he handled things. It wasn't necessarily all civilian based. He was mostly just trying to attack the Autobots and Zeta Prime, and trying to be honorable with his fights. And then you have somebody that's nowhere near the honor level that Megatron has. It's instead of taking the fight to the Autobots, he's trying to create chaos by targeting citizens. And so I'm like, I hate him. Like, they did a good job at making me hate him, but like I was like, this is a cowardly fight.
Yeah, he's
Yes,
Yeah,
he is.
exactly.
cheap shots.
Do we ever know if Scorponok was part of the gladiatorial arena as well?
It says he was, because when he was fighting Grimlock.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
They do. Okay, so I guess he
Right.
was the dirty cheater gladiator. He didn't
Sounds
really
like it.
follow the rules.
That sounds like something Scorponok would do. Speaking of Dinobots, I know, great segue. I love in this series established that there used to be 6 of them, and that they used to be like part of the elite vanguard, and they're Dinobots with a Y. And I would really enjoy more screen time of Scar or more flashbacks of that time. The amount of time we get with Scar feels so limited, and I want to, see them all work together because, I'm a dinosaur fan. I like them Dinobots.
He was just a medic too, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yes, he was.
Yeah.
That just goes to show you how obsolete he was. The Dinobots don't need a medic.
Well, he saved them, so it's a good thing they had him. But I do follow your thoughts, Onyx. I do want to see a comic where we get like earlier days of the Dinobots missions, so we could enjoy Scar and maybe hopefully see his alternate mode and see what he was before.
Yeah.
Something that I want to talk about is the Turricons. I do enjoy the weird kind of looking
yeah.
bots, especially the ones that have animal forms.
Hungar.
Yeah, Hungar and
There's a few of them that attacked Megatron.
yes,
And Junkin.
yeah. So and these were sent by Scorponok to make sure Megatron was dead.
It wasn't necessarily that they were sent, right? They were saying that if they go to Junkin and kill Megatron, they'll come back and reclaim the leader of the Decepticons themselves.
Oh, okay. Maybe I
Right.
might have understood that wrong then.
Yeah, and we all know how that went. One
lasted a whole
singular
page.
page.
Yeah, but I'm happy they showed up and that they were a part of the story.
Yep.
Right.
Since we're back on Junkin and kind of a shift, this was the only time we ever actually get to see the Quintessence. And even then, we only see one head of the Quintessence, right?
Yeah, the Quintessence himself. Is it like
Pentius?
his name?
Yeah. And so, like, to me, I'm like, throughout, like, all the cartoons that we watch and everything, the Quintessence were kind of masterminds, right? And in the comics, we're introduced to them in a little more of, they're just, like, useless. And, but the one last Quintessence of the whole brick, I guess, of the Quintessence, his name is Pentius, and he kind of helps Megatron get off of Junkin, and that's it. That's the end of Quintessence. Like, oh,
that is not necessarily
okay.
the end.
Well, okay, we'll leave that off later. But the rest of them, like, that's it. Like, there's if you guys remember, like, gosh, the G1 movie, like, weren't the Quintessence the one that were putting like Ultra Magnus, is it Bumblebee, and I think Hot Rod was on that one planet. I think it was Junkin, where they're getting ready to get eaten by the Sharkticons.
Yeah, it was Hot Rod, Cup, and some of the Dinobots.
I was completely off. I got one.
You got one of them.
And even then they were like the kings of that place, and they were the masterminds. And when we get introduced to them, we're like, here's the last Quintessence in a cave, very much not in control.
Pinned by rubble.
Yeah.
He couldn't even move.
Yeah. And he's also, by the way, Megatron's pet now for the rest.
For the next of the few issues, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, like, that, to me, like, that was interesting. It's like, okay, this is the first time and last time we see the Quintessence.
Short-lived. So at least I want to cover briefly about the Energon that they find that was underneath the refinery. That is, like, I think Ratchet, Jetfire, and Perceptor go down into this cavern that's been created from the explosion, and they find like that this Energon is in like the rawest form it can, and if anyone touches it, they go pretty much psycho, and they like Ratchet falls in and tries to kill Perceptor for a short minute before snapping out of it. What's your thoughts on that?
It's a scary thought. I think it's a cool idea. Kind of brings Cybertron to maybe some millennia or ages that have passed, and maybe makes you wonder what kind of creatures lived here before, and they could consume that raw energon. It must have been a lot of carnage and fighting if they fall prey just like the current bots do?
To me, now that I'm reading this comic, I'm seeing the connections from this to the Optimus Prime saga when we see Onyx Prime. That makes any sense because he was
How
the
so?
person in charge of the beasts. I guess I'm trying not to give a lot away. In charge of the beasts, right? And so, like, it kind of shows the connection between that and the Dinobots getting their forms. And to me, that's what I'm seeing. I may be wrong, but like you can see, like, even though the beasts themselves weren't necessarily dinos, you can see that they're trying to at least draw some connection that there were beasts back then, I guess, if that makes any sense.
On prehistoric Cybertron?
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
Like I'm seeing the connection. Like, oh, okay. Well, that means when Onyx Prime came around, it was probably after these guys kind of dipped. But I'm like, oh, okay. I'm kind of glad I'm seeing some prehistoric Cybertron kind of backfill into how that we're seeing this, I guess, raw Energon. Kind of. It'll make sense when we go read Optimus Prime because I'm gonna leave a note for that.
Well,
Right.
talking about prehistoric Cybertron, we also find something else way bigger in that crater,
What's that?
which is Trypticon. It's located in the underneath Cybertron, sleeping underneath this Energon refinery.
Yeah, and that's the first time where we see him.
Seeing that massive monster come out and just start causing havoc is just like wow. Everything was a little bit peaceful, and then suddenly it's like, okay, now we gotta defend against this huge monster that's just rampaging.
Yeah, it feels very much like Godzilla.
I wanted to see him fight with Metroplex, but I kind of like the way how he went down instead.
At the end from the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's jump around a little bit. Before we get to that part though, I would like to point out throughout this period, we watched the Dinobots struggle with their adaptive forms, I'll say, and leave it a little bit boiler free. But so they're trying to not transform into their alt modes because they become very aggressive and kill pretty much everything. And we see Optimus trying to stop Grimlock from transforming to an alt mode and fail and saying the words, remember who you are, and it doesn't work. He transforms into T-Rex and pretty much kills how many? 3, 4 bots around him? Like literally tears them in half. And then later we see Megatron and Grimlock who were fighting, but then got swallowed by Trypticon, and they had to team up to survive, get in a similar scenario where Grimlock was trying to fight back, turning into his alt mode. Megatron screams out like, remember who you are, and it works. Which to me screams out like they know each other better than Optimus and Grimlock, right? Which is apparent when you read the series and you know that Grimlock was also in the gladiator fights with Megatron. And I thought that was such an interesting point of detail.
I didn't read it like that. I didn't notice that until you just brought it up.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Megatron was saying that the only reason why you couldn't best me was because your compassion. I believe that was correct.
I don't know if he said what the reason was. He just said he was holding back his like power or something. I can't remember.
That might have been Scorponok that said that. Okay, I'm getting confused which one said what because they're both in the.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of fight things, but it's that kind of like, I think symmetry is the right word, that I enjoy, like seeing something happen, play out twice, but something varies a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a little bit how like Trypticon came down, right? Because they worked together.
I kind of, for me, I was wanting to take a step back and kind of look at the comics as a whole, especially this trilogy, if that's okay with you guys. One of the things that I really liked about this compared to anything we've probably ever seen, like any Transformers movie, TV show, was the only thing that this says, oh, there was just a war on Cybertron and they were just fighting la-di-da, la-di-da. And like, what I like about this trilogy is like they're showing you very specific cataclysmic fights that are kind of important, but it kind of shows you just how bad that they were fighting on Cybertron. Not like, oh, there was a war on Cybertron and Earth, like, okay, sure, let's just roll with that. But I really like the progression that we're seeing of Cybertron, Cybertron's getting destroyed. First comic, right? Hot Rod blew up an entire city. This one, a whole entire Energon refinery, almost is presumed the last of the Energon on the planet, destroyed, decimated, leaves a giant crater, and you're just seeing like this entire just planet being completely torn apart, and it's getting very specific on like all the fights. It's showing you more detail of how bad the Warrior Cybertron was, because like like I was saying, it's like I'm just glad that they're saying that or in showing this versus like all the movies and other stuff where it's just like, yeah, there was a war on Cybertron.
Right, it's that show don't tell kind of
Exactly,
scenario,
exactly.
which they're pretty good at here in the comics. Which that's what comics are. They're show and not a lot of tell. I mean, some of the series there's going to be like blocks of text, but this is not one of them. This is one of the good ones, right?
Yeah, kind of shows you why the reason why they leave Cybertron and end up fighting on Earth is because they don't have a Cybertron to return with all the fighting and all the
I think we got that far
destruction
yet.
they've caused. So, well, not necessarily like in
Oh, you mean
this
like in
comic or
general?
anything. In general, just kind of the all this fighting and everything must have left Cybertron decimated and destroyed in many ways. So every time they go on Earth or every time they land on Earth, depending on the media that you watch, is because they've either finished destroying everything or all the resources are gone and they just can't live there anymore and they just have to make their way to a different planet or protect a different planet because the Decepticons are leaving, trying to find a way to come back even stronger and finish what they started.
Yep.
So it's just kind of crazy.
Right, very much their motto of like the strongest will survive.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah, no, that's makes sense.
I do want to touch upon that they brought in Bulkhead, which is,
Oh yes,
if I'm not mistaken, he's a character that was made for the Transformers animated TV show for the first time. And then after that,
yeah.
he's been more prominent in the stories and in the comics. And I think that's pretty cool that they've created a new character and then he's becoming more and more important to the story. And if I'm not mistaken, in this comic, he's the leader of the scientists or the engineers on Cybertron or the Engineers Guild. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but he was in a scene with Dia Atlas, right?
Yeah, they Optimus has a meeting with all the big branches of like engineering, scientists, and or medicine, and the transportation. I think it was
I think it was like all
Atlas.
the guilds, like there's the engineering guild and all that.
Yeah, all the guilds in
Right.
Cybertron, and so he's part of one, which I think it's the engineering one. So I think that's pretty cool.
Oh, I forgot
Makes
to
sense.
mention, we saw a brief glimpse of Wreck-Gar when,
Did we?
yeah, when Megatron was getting tossed. Did you guys not see it? It was literally one panel of just Wreck-Gar, and that was it.
When he's landing on in
I thought that
Junkion.
was just a generic Junkion.
Yeah,
No, that's just definitely something. What he says is definitely something Wreck-Gar says.
I totally believe you.
Let me. I don't remember the page number.
Well, maybe we'll splash it up on the YouTube version of this audio. What do you think?
Yeah.
Put some little screenshots
Yeah.
of stuff here and
Yeah.
there.
yeah. So everybody could see what we're talking
And
about.
if there's nothing, we'll just have a giant question mark spinning around in a circle. Good luck animating that, whoever's job that is. Any other last minute things?
trying to think. There's so much chaos and so many.
Right, there's a lot.
Interesting.
And those listening in, I definitely recommend reading it. It's full of details we did not even touch on, which is on purpose.
Yes. Yeah, we try to keep it vague and not spoil too much.
Right? Okay. Should
Okay,
we?
I found it.
You got
I
it?
found the Wreck-Gar quote. I found the Wreck-Gar quote, and it's the guy with the mustache, like Mr. Miyagi, and he goes, "Bounty from the heavens, feast for kings, fell from the sky on flightless wings."
Yeah.
Don't tell me that's not something Wreck-Gar doesn't say.
Yeah.
You get the gold star, a rod star, if you will.
I've heard of that. I haven't read those comics, so you listeners out there will figure that out with me.
Perfect. All right. Ending thoughts. We have up next on, not next week, but because we do this every other week, our next read is going to be Primacy. So for those readers out there following with us, you know what to read. What do you think Megatron's up to? What is he going to do?
We'll have to stay tuned and continue this
Yeah.
story because this is the end of this awesome trilogy,
Right.
and then we'll see where the comics
Yeah,
take us
more will
next.
be provided next time. In the meantime, if you're looking for more Transformer stuff, we do have a D&D podcast. It's called Transform and Roll Out! Exclamation point Rise of the World Killers. So that's pretty interesting. We have a couple emails here. Who wants to read this first one here?
Says pretty damn funny. I liked it. Smiley face, thumbs up.
Thank you, buddy.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, please. Anything that we missed, anything that you want us to cover, and just let us know.
Shout out, whatever you want. If you want to, whatever. We got another review here for the spin-off series for the D&D podcast. It's very short, but I can guess what their favorite character is so far based on their comment. Yeah, LMAO, Bob XD. Thank you. We appreciate it.
It's just the man in the way.
Bob is a great character. I wonder if we'll see him again.
See, if you any listeners out there that want to know what happened to Bob or where Bob is, please go listen to the D&D podcast. You'll find out.
All right, enough podcast stuff. What are we working on next, guys? The in between, the Transformers in between. Recently, there's been a deck building game. Kilobyte, you want to talk more about that?
Yes. Yeah. So Renegade Studios is coming out with a Transformers deck building game, and they've already posted the rules on how to play. So we're going to be doing a video on that, covering those rules, and hopefully when it comes out, we can get together and we'll have a video of us playing it, and you can learn how to play and watch us play on YouTube.
Yeah, that should be fun.
The art is very similar to the Transformers TCG because they've been using some scenes from the comics. So if you've been reading the comics with us, you'll see some scenes and you're like, oh, I know where that's from, which is always cool.
Yeah, I like that when they did that with that TCG game, the card game. That was a good time.
If only they could remake it.
Yeah. Speaking of, I know we didn't get to this last episode. Cosplays. Who's excited about that?
I'm excited. I can't wait to things go back to normal so we can start going to cons and hopefully start building our cosplays. We had ideas of Transformers that we wanted to cosplay as.
Let's keep that a surprise. That way, when we actually run into people in a con,
Yeah.
they'll be like, "Oh, is this one of the trio or not?"
Yeah. No.
Oh, okay. You want to keep guessing?
Yeah, you can send us emails if you think
Yeah,
what
that's a great
characters we're gonna pick.
And you know what? If you get it right, if you get the person lined up with the character correct, we'll tell you if you're right on
Yes,
air.
we will.
We're not gonna say who it is or who we are. We're just gonna say you and you're right. We're not.
Yes, correct. Therefore, you know you're right, but no one else will know
Yeah.
who's who. Awesome.
Yeah, and then on top of the cosplay, I wanted to kind of just throw out there. We have just finished pretty much creating our website.
It is swervesbarpodcast.com, all one word.
On there, you'll find a lot of the latest details of which podcast is out, what's the latest one. You'll have links to Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. And on top of that, you will find an archives, two different archives, one for the D&D as well as one for the comic archive that we're doing right now.
Do we want to cover the Twitch channel for Computron?
Absolutely. Computron, what's your Twitch channel?
If you guys want to come hang out with me, because I'm a really cool guy. Just kidding. I'm like the worst of the group here. If you guys want to come hang out with me, my Twitch channel is twitch.tv/Computron. All the O's are replaced with zeros.
Right on. What game are you playing now? Or
Right
which
now-
games have you finished?
Yeah. Let's see. A game that I finished. I have just finished the latest Resident Evil. I'm playing. I'm gonna be splitting up my stream actually. Some days I'm gonna be playing Crosscode, and I just realized as of recently, Days Gone has just released on Steam, and so I wanted to take a stab at that, considering that's the settings necessarily in my home state. The developers are from
You mean
Benwood.
Iocon's Cybertron, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Benplex.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Until next time, till all are one.
Till all are one.
Till all are one.
Washpinator would like a drink, please. Are you ignoring Washpinator?